Howdy do, fellow kids.
What?
As accurate as that meme is, if my memory serves me correctly, this episode isn't actually as pandering to early teens as I thought it would be. But to say that I have high expectations for this episode would be a long shot. That was Phoenix, by the way. Honestly, I have like no preamble for this episode because I just don't really remember it at all. The only things that come to mind is that Bill was still pretty great up to this point and that it features the emoji bots, but nothing else really. So I guess we might as well just start with this one. The episode starts off with more lovable 12 and Bill banter, where she talks about flying the TARDIS, and her comments about the seats not reaching the controls are pretty funny and charming, before they're rudely interrupted by Nardole.
Who's that?
One of the unfortunate downsides of Nardole as a companion, well, I say one of, the only downside of Nardole as a companion, is when he's basically just forced into the role of saying, "Doctor, you need to go to the vault. Audience, don't forget about the vault." Which is just an absolute waste of this character and his potential. As we see in future stories, and in the return of Dr. Mysterio, that Nardole actually complements 12 perfectly, and can even have some super effective and impactful moments, as he can challenge the Doctor, but he also plays off him so naturally. But a lot of this series, they just waste him, unfortunately. And this episode was the first to set the trend of this annoying vault bonking. The only real upside of him in this episode is this line.
Could you put the kettle on, please?
I'm not making any for her. She could make her own.
I love him.
Past or future?
Future.
Why?
Why do you think? I want to see if he's happy.
Or because it's become tradition, intentional or not, that whenever the Doctor gets a new companion in New Who, the first episode is set in modern day, and then we get an episode in the future, and then we get an episode in the past. So that's the real reason you wanted to see the future. We then cut to the Emoji Movie. That's what I'm going to call this place because I'm an unfunny hack. But when we cut to the Emoji Movie, we see Ronnie's mum trying to convince this other one to keep smiling, while telling her that their mum is dead, before these nanobot things go and kill her. Not gonna lie, this concept for what these robots actually do is pretty fucking cool and interesting. I'm not gonna lie. Unless you're fully smiling, they trap and kill you no matter what just happened. You could definitely do a lot of interesting things with that idea. Unfortunately though, the scene conveying that idea, like with a lot of cool ideas in the Moffat era, is pretty stupid. Because instead of actually telling her what these things do, Ronnie's mum decided to tell her that all of their relatives are dead and that she has to smile. Could you not have been more specific, you wart? You probably could have saved both yourself and this other character if you'd thought this through more clearly. Not to mention the fact that you barely put up any fight to stop her from coming back, you reptile. So we get the annoyingly blue title sequence, luckily not out of sync this week, and we see that... You're telling me the same motherfucker who wrote In the Forest of the Shite, the worst episode of Series 8, is back writing another episode of Doctor Who? As if I needed further proof that Series 10 was a half-assed job than Moffat bringing back one of the show's worst writers ever. Bloody Nora. So we get more banter between the Doctor and Bill before we get more drip feeding about the vault. And you know what? It's starting to sound more interesting with every episode. The Doctor made a promise because of a thing, and because of that thing, he has to stay on Earth guarding the vault? That sounds intriguing. Can't wait until we get more on that. We then get a pretty funny line that I think Capaldi's performance actually lets down.
That's a very offensive remark. Don't make personal remarks like that.
Seriously, I know that Capaldi being bored is one of the biggest blights on Series 10, but I don't remember it being so apparent. Like, just compare this to the line from Last Christmas.
There's a horror movie called Alien. That's really offensive. No wonder everyone keeps invading you. That's a very offensive remark. Don't make personal remarks like that.
It's pretty obvious which one of these jokes was better delivered. So the Doctor and Bill meet an emoji bot in a pretty comedic fashion and they get their emoji badges. And we get an explanation of how they work, which is pretty interesting. And we get some good lines from Bill.
So everyone you walk past can see what you're thinking. Well, if you really fancy someone.
Then we get more of the Doctor thinking about what's wrong with the place before Bill finds out the Doctor has 2 hearts.
One portion. Is there going to be food sexism even in the future? Is this bloke utopia?
Bruh. I do actually like the contrast in the reactions in this scene, however, as the Doctor has figured out the place and is gushing about it, while Bill is still stuck all the way back at the Doctor has two hearts and is confused throughout this shallow scene, which is pretty funny, and it causes a pretty funny juxtaposition. So we get more exploring before they find a bunch of skulls from all the dead people. Didn't need an unnecessary flashback to stuff we'd seen 10 minutes ago, but thanks anyway. Wasn't I complaining about this in episode 1 as well? So they skedaddle out and get cornered by the emoji bots, before the Doctor figures out that they have to smile to keep the bots pleased. And not gonna lie, the Doctor and Bill faking smiles and walking past these robots is pretty funny. But then the episode does something very unintentionally that pretty much just kills all of the stakes. And what makes it worse is that I don't even think the episode notices that it did that, because it happens so quickly. In a like 10-second shot, the Doctor frees Bill from an emoji bot by telling her to smile and using the Sonic. Yeah, so now we know that in pretty much any scene where the Doctor and Bill are in peril, as long as they fake a smile and he has the Sonic, they're fine. And we don't even get a shot of Bill faking a smile in that scene, so for all we know, the Sonic could just free them from the emoji bots and they're fine. Well, there goes all of this episode's tension that was being set up over the last 17 minutes. So the Doctor tries to drop Bill off, and I do like his moral stand against this place existing in general, and how he just wants to blow it up, as that's a very in-character thing for the Doctor to do. Sorry, I'm still recovering from the abortion that is hell-bent destroying the Doctor's characters and morals. And at the time of this script being written, Series 13 is probably on its way. So I can't wait to watch the Doctor's morals get butchered every week when the devil returns to our screen. I also, I don't know, I'm just saying you could follow my Instagram if you're curious on Series 13, or follow my Twitter, you know, because I'm not reviewing it when it comes out, because that's cringe. And also I think the longer it gets to sit in your brain, the more you have to say about the episodes, because your thoughts are fully developed. This is not me making excuses for reviewing Series 12 like 6 months after it came out, even though I wouldn't have done that anyway, because if lockdown didn't happen, the TARDIS Team channel would probably still be dead, but whatever.
And stay away from my browser history!
Oh, dude! Jesus! Oh my God! Why would you do that, dude?
Because
Browser history.
it's funny!
Comedy. Bill then notices that the TARDIS door sign perfectly summarizes what the Doctor as a character does, and honestly that's a pretty great detail, as it's one that I hadn't even really noticed before. And I like the scene where she confronts the Doctor about it. It's just a perfect summary of the Doctor's character, being one who can't resist helping no matter where he goes and what he does. It's great. And she then follows him because of course she does, and we get a great line from Capaldi.
Why are you Scottish?
It's Scottish, I'm just cross.
Unfortunately though, we then get yet another absolutely stake-killing moment where it's revealed that the entire building is made up of these nanobots. This, in concept, isn't the problem, but it's the fact that at any point in this episode where the emoji bots are set out to kill, the ground or the walls or the ceiling could easily engulf them, but it just doesn't for some reason. Seriously, imagine how much more tense this episode would be if they both knew that everything around them was always a threat. Everywhere they go, they have to tread lightly, as they're never truly safe. They're always in danger. But no. They come out of a wall sometimes for a cool shot, but that's about it. So, 2 times over now, the stakes in this story have just been completely fucked. Ugh. So they find the human spaceship place embedded within, and we get a funny moment where the Doctor tricks Bill into staying behind and reading the map, while he explores and does the interesting stuff, which is pretty humorous. And I love Bill's reaction when she realizes she's on a spaceship, because she's so gleeful and excited. It once again acts as a way of making her character more likable and relatable to the audience. And in these 2 episodes, she's already become a much better audience surrogate than Clara ever was, because Bill actually feels like a human. Even at her best in Series 8, Clara felt a bit too blank at points to be fully relatable, especially since she was just such a shit person in her relationship. Pre-Live the Land, Bill's supremacy will forever reign supreme. Just ignore knock knock. Bill then finds a dead MILF who, for some reason, next to her is a book full of all of recorded human history in it. strange bit of contrivance, but this does actually lead to a genuinely great moment, where Bill realizes that Earth had to be evacuated, and Pearl Mackie's acting in this scene is fantastic. Seriously, the way she communicates this sadness is excellent. The way she makes her voice sound all shaky and worried and on the verge of tears, it's just, mwah! It's perfection. And better than any of Jenna Coleman's acting in Series 9. Unfortunately though, they don't really do much else with this. It just sort of exists as a very short 1-minute scene, which is great on its own, but they could have done so much more with it. Especially since it's revealed like a second later that there's loads of people in these pod things that look really shit, by the way. And it's super noticeable because for the most part, this episode has been really well crafted and it looks gorgeous, so a shit effect is noticeable. Then we get a really stupid moment where Bill says she'll be with the doctor in a moment, and it takes him way too long to realize there's an emoji bot behind him. So he goes to bonk it off, and somehow the thing moves fast enough to the point where it can grab him as it's fallen. We have fucking seen how slowly these things move before. How the fuck did it do that? And why the fuck did it wait so long before even attempting to attack him? You oblong blubber bitch. Why did you not just do that in the first place, you fucking dipshit? So the doctor then realizes the reason the Vardis went rogue was because people were grieving, and their job is to make sure everyone is happy. So they eliminated it, which in itself I actually think is a good idea. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm quite excited for part 2 to explore this concept more. But then the major problem with this episode arises, when we realize that there's only 10 minutes left of this episode and no second part. So we don't really get to delve into the interesting concept much, outside of the humans briefly trying to start a war, and then the doctor turns off the robots and on again, and that's it. No, I'm not fucking joking, that's how this episode's issue is resolved, and it's absolutely fucking joked here. It's like an actual parody ending, or a Series 7 ending. Seriously, and you can tell that this was so clearly rushed because of how obviously irrational the humans are acting when the doctor tells them what's been happening. He explains the whole grief is the enemy to the Vardy thing, and this guy's takeaway is...
Did listen. What did I miss? I don't care why.
Then you will die too, and so will everyone on your ship. Enemy.
They want to kill us.
No, they want to help you. Killing you is just a side effect.
Get out of my way.
What an absolute fucking retard. This is almost as narrow as the view on the Time War in Hell Bent. So after a flowery 12th Doctor speech, 12 and Bill fuck off and we get ready to start Thin Ice. What? Did that sound like an underwhelming resolution? Well, you're goddamn right it is! So, that was How Do You Do, Fellow Kids. And unfortunately, this episode is even worse than the pilot. While Bill's characterization is still pretty great in this episode, and Mackie's and Capaldi's chemistry is still fantastic and endlessly charming, this episode itself is just kind of a drag, to be honest. You know how Classic Who always has the first part, or several parts depending on how long the story, needed to drag out its story, devoted to exploring and setting up other parts, but usually in Classic Who it just feels like a waste of time because the majority of the shit feels superfluous by the end of the story? Well, this episode is in a pretty similar vein. The first 35 minutes of this episode feels like setup for more, and for the most part, ignoring some exceptional amounts of tism done by the story and the stakes, it's pretty good. It sort of rings like a slower paced but necessary setup to a second part like Human Nature. But unlike Human Nature, this story isn't a two-parter, so all that setup and world building does feel like a waste of time, because all that interesting shit goes nowhere, because this episode resolves itself in 5 minutes with a fucking turn it off and turn it on excuse, which is just, oh, fuck off! And it's still super apparent in this episode that Capaldi is just bored. And once again, I can't even really blame him, because he just doesn't get much to work with. But at last, in some of the scenes in this episode, he does look invested. But most of the time, like in the pilot, you can tell he's just disinterested, especially in some line delivery. So overall, this episode unfortunately is just bad. Not insanely insufferable or anything, it's just kind of there. And it's shit. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of the time in this review that I've been doing a lot more segues than usual, because a lot of this episode is just like that. this bit of exploration, and then this bit of exploration, and then this bit of exploration, until Frank Cottrell Boyce realizes Moffat has the hammer over him and wraps the story up in a really lazy way. Not as bad as in Forest of the Shite by any means, but I don't think this is an episode I'm ever gonna revisit. Up next is Thick Double C Ice.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?